Before that, I have invited a special person today. She is I would say primarily she is a dancer. Secondly, she is doing her CA. Come on, Aisha. Aisha, come on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Aishari.
Hi.
I'm from Calicut. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Aisha.
Welcome, Aisha ji.
So Meenakshi said, so Aisha, uh, you see the cursor moving towards your right. This is Nitya. She is BTech plus great lot of qualifications in management and statistics and all that. She is working in a senior position in government of Australia. Right now she is in Darwin. She is sitting there. This is Naveen Chandra, a wonderful guy, a senior officer in the Secretariat of the Chief Minister of Bihar. And he is sitting in Patna. And this is Ramesh Manickam. He's a top manager in German organization Siemens, but working in the research and development department of Siemens in Bangalore. He's an MTech from IIT Delhi with some 25 years of experience. Then this is Ashwati. She is an architect. She was working with the currently top architect in country called Christopher Benninger. But after the COVID situation, she is now preparing to start her own architectural firm. This is Veena Ganesh, a genius therapist doing training programs in creativity and related aspects. This is Mantra Rishiga doing her final year degree, and here is Amay Rajarshi just completed his final degree. And we have three more people. All of them are working in organizations, therefore they may not be able to come on that time, most of the time. We are expecting uh, three more, but they may join anytime. And anyway, we record our video program, so it will be available in the YouTube, not entire program, but selected parts will be in the YouTube. So they have some freedom to be late or sometimes you're not present. How are you, Vina?
I'm okay, sir. I'm fine.
All right. Okay. All right, Ramesh, if you're ready, you can proceed. I had a glance through your presentation.
Okay, sir.
It is very, extremely, very. By the way, Ramesh, Ashwati is recording it, Ramesh. You don't have to record it.
Oh, okay, sir. Then that's okay. Yeah.
And there is Tintin. Why don't you come on the screen? And this is Tintin. Again, he was a top IT professional, and right now he is a consultant for an international firm called Deloitte. Heard of it? Deloitte. Aisha. So you're also doing your chartered accountancy. Have you heard of that firm called Deloitte? Yeah. It is one of the topmost consultancy plus accounting plus that kind of organization in the world. Tintin. Now Vinay is here. Vinay, just come on the stage. We have an invited guest today. This is Vinay. He is the head of marketing of a top textile company. And we have an invited person today, very special person by name Aisha Reem. I would like to introduce her basically as an entity of dance. She's a dancer. Plus, she is currently doing her CA. She writes very well, and she has a lot of creative inclinations. That's all. Okay, Tintin. All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
Okay, Ramesh.
Yes, sir.
I welcome your presentation. It is very, very high order. very higher order. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so I'll just share the screen. Is the screen visible, sir?
Yeah, visible.
Yeah, okay. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Prasad sir, for uh, uh, asking me to take this session. And so today the topic that we have been discussing the from last week is about the learnings since onset. So before starting this, I thought let me do a bit of statistics in the 16,803 days which I have spent on this earth. Let me do a bit of statistics. 22nd November 2020, that's almost 9 months, 27 days since I've been associated with this Genius in Self program, about 300 days, which is close to 7,200 hours. In that, roughly about, say, 1/3, if it's the productive time or effective time, about 5% of my time in the last 9 months I spent in Genius and Self. That is again a huge amount of time. At about 135 hours, we have spent on this, about 42 sessions, and maybe 1 or 2 sessions I would have missed, but that also I was trying to catch up with Ashwati's recordings. So this is just to give a background about what is the impact this particular program would have had on each of us. So just I was trying to see statistics on that. From there, I was trying to connect the dots in terms of what is the learnings when sir asked us to do. It was again, lots of learnings were there from small to big. I was trying to see how I can capture every single aspect of my learnings. Then I found out that I cannot capture it in one single aspect of it. So there has to be multiple dimensions because the learnings has happened in multiple dimensions. To a certain level, I would try to do a justice to document these learnings from multiple perspectives. So that's where I put this Sanskrit word samsanjanam, where I was trying to combine, join, connect the dots, unite everything. And the learnings from Prasad sir sessions, I would want to classify in multiple activities. So this is again a part of my daily checklist of activities from knowing. So in terms of knowing, it is to do with understanding what is already available in this world. So in terms of capturing knowledge, in terms of reading, in terms of explorations on existing activities, existing things. Second is in being. So understanding self, understanding the body, understanding mind, understanding the spiritual sense, understand in terms of inspiration. Major Prasad sir's learning has impacted me on the being part of it. And doing is where my regular work, my extended works in terms of my regular sustenance, in terms of doing something beyond. So the being that I've learned in Prasad sir sessions is impacted a lot in my doing. I would want to touch upon that also in today's session. And visibility. So now knowing, being, doing is what we normally put it together, but all the other ones are some of the extensions which I felt are some things that I have broken it down. Some of these can also be grouped into knowing, being, doing. So one is showing.
Okay, just a minute, Ramesh. I may intervene in between as usual.
Yes,
So, to the attention of Aisha, Ramesh said three critical words: knowing, doing, and being. So, we can look at the human entity and its development and evolution from three angles or three spokes of the wheel, like of a bullock cart, three spokes. One is called knowing, that all the knowing you have for anybody. For example, for example, for you, the knowing in Bharatanatyam, or the knowing in accounting, or the knowing in painting, or like Ashwati, knowing in architecture, or like Ramesh, knowing in, he's a design engineer. He's one of the top design engineers in the country, or marketing. So whatever you know, a human being has to know. Unlike the cat and the bird and other entities in the world, human beings can evolve only by knowing. So knowing is a critical dimension. And a certain part of that knowing, all knowings are of course very significant, but there are certain knowings which has to be translated, which has to be converted into doing. Doing means to do. For example, you can have knowing about a certain dish, a certain food item. You can look into the book of recipes. You can learn that ingredients. You can learn how to cook, etc. By reading that book, writing about that recipe in an examination and get an A plus. That is knowing. Doing meaning actually entering in the kitchen and translating whatever you have learned or you are knowing into the doing of cooking. That is called doing, the second dimension. Okay, that means the second spoke of the wheel, like a three-spoke wheel, like the steering wheel. Three spokes. That means three. What is a spoke? From the center to the rim, connecting. So doing is the second one. And most of the critical knowings are really valid or really valuable, or the value of a knowing is in doing it. A great lot of people in the world have a lot of knowings, but very rarely, seldom they translate, they convert, they give expression, like Ramesh said, very rarely they manifest knowing into doing. Like Satyameva Jayate, it's a great knowing, but they do not most of the time translate that Satyamness into doing. Their doings may not be Satyam. They may do many unethical activities or love your neighbor, for example. That is all philosophical, or there are doings mentioned in physics or in engineering, technologies, medical technology, or management, or marketing, or various science knowledges. They are all great knowings, but very few people only can translate that knowing in physics or chemistry or engineering or various technologies into real doing. That's why when there are so many engineers in India, only very few can do wonderful doing of that engineering. For example, the great bridges, great factories, or great engineering in India, most of the time they have been supervised by engineers from US or Canada or Germany or England. We also have the universities and institutes where such knowings are available, but we do not train the students, their attention, their intellectual engines of conversion, imagination, visualization, and so that they can translate their knowledge, let us say, in engineering design of an automobile, of a car, into doing. See, if you look at the cars in India, most of them have been designed in Japan or US or other places. So that is called doing. Like your knowledge in dance is converted into doing. And third dimension is being, B-E-I-N-G. Being meaning that being right now sitting there, Aisha sitting there, or Ramesh sitting there, Veena sitting there, Naveen sitting there. That is the being, B-E-I-N-G. So there are certain knowings that should be translated into being. Let us say character, so-called good character, to be honest, to have integrity, to be truthful, to have many other things like gratitude or various values and principles of life and work and relationships. These values are known to many people, but that values or that knowings are not converted into being. That means that person becomes truthful, Truth is wonderful. Everybody can give a talk on truth, but that truthfulness is not converted into their state of being. Get the point, Aisha? This is for clarification of Aisha. So that is what, because when Ramesh says everybody else is clear about these things. So I am explaining this so that Aisha also can go along with what Ramesh is going to present. So Aisha is invited today, but today Ramesh is a highly qualified design engineer, so his ideas and concepts could be of a very different level. So you can write down points. When if you want to ask a question, you can ask today, on the spot or after something. All right, Aisha? All right. Okay, Ramesh, continue.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So than my regular presentations, so normally when I'm presenting again, Tintin was also talking last time that I
Ramesh,
normally
Ramesh,
not.
Ramesh, you reduce the speed of delivery of your
Yes,
ideas. All right.
yes, that's what I was coming to. So
Okay,
in
I
terms of
noticed it. I noticed it. Okay.
communication, I told to myself that I will be a bit more slow and uh, be a bit more calmer and deliver the talk. Yeah.
Beautiful. You're already doing it. Okay, please continue.
Yeah. So now in terms of knowing, being, and doing, so these are the primary three things where everything and anything that I'm showcasing it later will fall into. So these are all again the subcategories. So this showing, I was again trying to question myself, should I start putting that showing? So now this presentation is again showing. So anything that we are trying to showcase, it's not necessarily showcasing of self, but in terms of sharing. So that also is showing. So I would want to put under showing anything to create visibility. So at work, normally it's again a huge organization. Within that organization, I should create an identity for my work. For that, I need to start showing. So some substantial amount of my time is also going into showing. So I felt that I let me put one heading in terms of showing. So where at work I'm creating visibility in terms of my domain, in terms of design, in terms of experiences, defining experiences, how I'm able to showcase what I have in terms of sharing with others. All this I would want to classify into the showing part of it.
Wait. That's a very important point which you're talking. You have to stress a little more about that, Ramesh, because we have so many capabilities, we have so many knowings. We are talking about a different kind of doing today. That is the doing of showing what you know, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
what you said, okay? Showing in the basically in the form of even a PowerPoint or in the form of a written document or in
Yes,
the way you behave yourself in an organization or in a public place or in a group or other kinds of trained showings. That's a very important point, Ramesh. So showings, a very
yes, sir.
important doing. So one needs to develop various elegant ways of showing what you already know. That's what you mean, Ramesh. Is that so?
Yes, sir. It's an elegant way of showing because
Yeah.
that is where because an individual entity can do n number of activities, but unless he is able to communicate, unless he is able to showcase it, such that the other person is able to understand. So it can be in terms of showcasing of self or in terms of sharing an idea. So that communication, that all that will be part of that showing.
Of course, very important. So Ramesh is using the concept of showing. I would say the number one showing right now, if I use the concept of Ramesh, is in talking. Delivering the language. How do you explain? How do you define? How do you describe? How do you report whatever you have observed or whatever you know, whatever you have experienced, and so on and so forth? Right, Ramesh?
Yes, sir.
So Ramesh is now throwing a special light, in fact, which we have not done till today. The need of doing the showing or showcasing or manifesting your knowing in whatever forms, especially in the language. Though we never used that concept, we always focused on the way of language, languageifying. How do you report something the way you have experienced? how can you report it in such a way that like a bullet shot, it hits the target and serves the purpose? Very good point, Ramesh. And in fact, I have actually decided, Ramesh, to reserve some of the sessions or some significant part of the sessions to train everyone to do this so-called showing, in the sense of very precisely, very effectively um, uh, delivering the language. I mean, explanations and descriptions.
Yeah, definitely,
Very
sir.
important. By the way, before you get on to the next slide, please explain how you coincided with the concept of Samasajanam here also. Okay?
Yeah,
Samasajanam.
yeah.
All right. Okay.
So
Proceed. Yeah.
yeah. So again, showing is very important because in the recent era of internet and social media, all that thing, it's not necessarily, again, I would not want to limit in terms of showcasing a self, in terms of sharing. From that perspective is where I'm putting importance in terms of it showing. The next is the caring. So caring, I always felt the strength for an individual comes from multiple perspectives. So I would want to talk about multiple dimensions of what I have been in the last 16,000 days or something. So where this caring part of it, with respect to family or with respect to home, I was not into that domain at all because my overall objective was somewhere else. But the last 1.5 years, the amount of caring and it gives a different level of energy in terms of your family, in terms of your network. Now, in terms of network, again, the genius choice is again an extended family for me. That caring, every individual within the genius choice cares for me and I care for everyone. The encouragement that they bring in, the critical comments that they bring in. So all those are again, me as an individual, I was not looking at caring at all. But this opened up a complete new dimension in terms of a strength, which gives a lots of confidence. Again, I would want to call caring not only from a relationship perspective, but again in terms of sharing responsibilities. Again, in terms of the working at home, I was totally a no-no in the last 20 years or something in the last marriage life. But in the last 1.5 years, I've been involved with Anandavali in terms of lots of activities at home. All that is again, I show a bit of caring. So that is again bringing in lots of positive energies in the being. So I thought, let me have that also as one of the heading in terms of because the activities which I put here are the activities which are taking some amount of my regular time in my day. So from that perspective, I put in terms of family, network, home working, that is taking some amount of my work. So that is one heading which I put here.
Ramesh, for the sake of the integrity of language, always try to use the concept of doing instead of activities.
Okay, sir.
So, and also point out to the audience whether do not assume. Now, actually, you are talking about and the top listed thing in the ideas in the slide, right? So, from
Yes,
knowing
sir.
and being, then sorry, doing, then showing. Now you finished the caring, right? So that also you please indicate that which aspect you are talking. And there is a
Yes, sir.
black mark here. What is that?
That is that screen, sir. That is part of the screen speaker. So it doesn't go. So it
Okay,
just
all right.
stays there.
Okay, please proceed. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So please stop me whenever there is any clarifications or anything that we can discuss. So then we can discuss on that and keep moving on further. The next one which I would want to discuss about is giving. Giving is again a derivative from doing, where in terms of the contributions, in terms of sharing, in terms of community, larger within my design community or within the genius choice community or within the larger community in terms of giving. So whatever I have gained, I am giving. But when this giving has been there in my initial part of the career, I was looking at what is it in for me. But now the giving has changed in terms of I'm not looking at it in terms of what is in for me. I have something, let me share. So that unconditional sharing is where the changes happen in terms of the giving. Next, I would go on to the sorry. So this is the giving, growing part of it. Yeah. The next is the growing. So growing normally is looking at something not at the present, what I am going to grow tomorrow or the next moment or next second. So it is to do with the future. So for looking at what I am going to grow, so that it's a natural growth, but there is also some amount of reflection that happens, which changes my being to a certain level. So my doing, this again a derivative of doing. So my doing is related to what I reflect on myself on my past, and based on it, I do some course corrections, or I do my planning based on my reflection. So that enhances my growing capacity. So in terms of reflecting, planning, and executing, so that I would want to classify it into growing.
Please explain once again the growing part.
Okay, growing. So me as a being, or any living thing in this earth continuously evolves, continuously grows. So it can grow as a forest on its own, or it can grow as a much more healthier being. So there is a combination of randomness, and there's a combination of organized in the way that it has to grow. So that makes the being a healthier being in terms of the growth. So for the being to be much more healthier in terms of growing, the reflecting part of it is
of course, that engine of reflecting upon the kind of doings or the kind of noise vis-a-vis an upper direction is essential for growing. Am I right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Only in that reflection, what I am, what I have been, what I want to be. So that reflection is a compulsory engine, compulsory chapter required for growing. Great lot of people are not growing because they do not reflect. Reflect meaning there can be standard procedures of reflection. One can just sit down at 10 o'clock in the night and just make a quick assessment of what I have been doing. Is that the only way I could do it? Can there be a better way of doing it? Not necessarily every day, at least on significant days. Was there a better way to talk to that person? Was there a different way to interact with that person? Was there a different? That is called reflection. So when you do that reflection, naturally the reflected thing has to proceed. So, or someone can start writing a diary every day. Oh, this is what I have done today. So just write that. And in that very process of writing what one has been doing in a day, that writing itself involves moments of reflection. Because you have to go back to that day. Then only you can write about it. So even that is a reflection. And doing that for a long time, you will automatically develop that engine of reflection to run parallel, like two engines of a jet aircraft. That engine also will run parallel to your doing. Then only there is growing. Great lot of people are playing cricket. Great lot of people are trying to learn dance. Great lot of people are trying to learn keyboard, violin, etc., etc., etc. But only very few people reach the finer possibilities of that performance. Though they are capable, because why they are only they? Because only they happen to reflect upon that. A lot of people say, I have criticized publicly. A lot of people say, I got first prize because of my hard work. That is not correct, in the sense that A great lot of people do really hard work. They just do hard work and go and sleep. They do not reflect upon the so-called work they have been doing. So, very important variable, Ramesh, Ramesh, you have to incorporate that things in your writing.
Yes,
When you discuss and when you interpret a thing, you are bringing in several significant engines, significant ingredients required for that. Like you casually mentioned reflection. Of course, that's an important point. But you could have also focused upon that significant or critical role of reflection in the process of growing. All right.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, you could have talked about the significant element. Knowing, being, doing is a general term. You could have talked about the significant variable required for showing, significant variable required for caring, significant at least one, minimum three. Okay, at least one critical part by which this doing of caring is implemented. A significant part, a significant linkage by which the doing of giving becomes really giving, like you have done for growing reflection.
Yes, sir.
So, yes.
In my presentation, I will be touching upon all these areas that I have been listing it out in multiple areas, sir.
Oh, in the coming slides, sir.
Coming slides,
Beautiful.
all that will be part of it.
Okay,
So
proceed.
this is like a precursor in terms of showcasing. These are all the areas which I will be touching upon. So I'm not going into depth here. So I'm just like a precursor.
In other words, these elements will be discussed in the subsequent slides, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're right,
All
sir.
right, beautiful. Okay, proceed. Yeah.
So the next one is having. So like showing, I was also questioning multiple times of the concept of having. So each of us buy something, each of us want something, each of us desire to have something, or not only you being a part of an extended family, the family wants certain things, part of owning. So that having has a certain influence on what we are doing and also what we are being. So the desire of wanting something, it could be as simple as I would want to have a good pen. So that also is, I would want to classify that also into part of having. Why should I want to have a good pen? So that could be from as simple as a pen to whatever it can be extrapolated to having from multiple dimensions. Each of us want to have something. So that having can also become from a positive connotation that can also pull a person onto a negative connotation, where instead of having as the output, if you put having as a driver, it becomes as a negative. So you are running in for something else for having. But if having is instead of it become as a driver, it is a consequence. It's an output. So then from that perspective, the having becomes as a more pleasurable activity than it becomes as a more stressful activity. From next, I would want to get into the relaxing part of it. So the relaxing part is the being to be at its best. It requires breaks. It requires entertainment. It requires recharging. And I would want to say the best part of being comes when it is in that relaxed mode. So this again, during my centroid days, continuous running in terms of work activities, where I was not spending time on relaxing or in terms of traveling, it had completely constrained myself, and it had closed a certain amount of my domain perspectives. That relaxing again opens up a perspective where your being and doing enhances. From there, going on to the charging. The charging is again your body requires to recharge itself in terms of your sleeping, naps. It needs to energize the body for it to be more efficient in the doing part of it. Finally, I want to come up with your climbing. So this is part of the planning activity that we have seen earlier. All of us put certain goals. So I divide my work into two areas. My regular work, I do it as work. My extended works, I do it as a work in terms of what destination which I would want to go. So I always feel that climbing in terms of climbing a mountain. So you need to go towards the top of a mountain, but you don't have a proper pathway, you don't have a proper direction, but you know the destination I should reach on top of the mountain. So it's okay. Earlier, I always feel that going on top of mountain, I should go in the least possible time. I should go as speed as possible. So that speed, that least possible time, all these as constraints when I'm putting onto myself, the being becomes really very stressed. But the sessions in terms of the turning point, you take as such naturally. Lots of the sessions in Prasad's topic I would be touching on, which allowed my goal to be more aligned and moving towards my ultimate destination than being a stressful activity. It is much more a pleasurable activity, is where I would want to touch upon in some of the slides which I am going to share. So these are all the different areas which I'll be talking on in my slides. From there, in terms of the contents of my presentation, to do justice to showcase what I have learned in the last 9 months, 27 days, I put different perspectives of, I was trying to see if I could showcase one perspective and show my learning, but I wouldn't do justice if I show only one perspective. So multiple perspectives, I thought, let me showcase it. The first one is me as a person, my journey, what I was earlier, and in the last 9 months, what has happened and how it has, I wouldn't want to call it as transformed, but it has fine-tuned me a lot, because I would, than a transformation, it has allowed me to understand and fine-tuned me to be more readiness factor. So that my past, present, and future, I will be touching upon as a pictorial journey. The next is my learning journey. In terms of the initial first part of it was lots of exposure sir gave us. Then lots of practice sessions. We were working on lots of exercises in terms of Jack and Jill, in terms of the Satori, the Sound of the Forest, the Master Cook. All those were practice sessions. Then from practice sessions, we went on to the fine-tuning aspects of it. So that I would want to touch upon a few learnings from the sessions on these three headings. The next is, what is a learning outcome that has impacted me as a person? So on three headings, I'll be touching upon in terms of what acceptance, in terms of what improvements it has brought into me, and reinitiation, some things that I have left earlier, but I have reinitiated some of those activities. So in these three areas, and the typical walkthrough in a typical day, from randomness to routine, that I would want to showcase, and Kalpaviksha. It's a wishing tree, so which I put across in a model. I call this as the SKEET framework. Any learning model is basically it can be dealt as a skill, something I need to practice, knowledge which is already available, I need to know about it, and explore. I need to go beyond knowledge, explore what is available out there. Experiment is where you are going beyond the obvious, trying to work on some things that is not available. So when you're experimenting, you're bound to fail number of times, but it's okay to experiment, and it's a must for you to experiment, for you to excel beyond. So your thinking process, in terms of your thinking through, in terms of thinking on multiple domains, and from there getting into the expression and experience are your contribution areas. In terms of expression, you need to showcase what you've been doing, and in terms of experience, what as a being it brings to you as an individual. So this I would want to showcase it as the Kalpavriksha, the wishing tree. And the final one is what the present state I am.